Jennifer, you're bringing us this story tonight about the passing of these pernicious, I'm going to use Alex from MSNBC's word, because when you provided that clip for us to run on the show and she dropped pernicious, I was like, ooh, that's a gorgeous $10 word. This pernicious legislation that's been passed in Georgia.
Yeah, so this occurs a few days ago, and I just want to preface it, like when we're talking about Jim Crow was a very dark period in history that was ushered in after the 1896 Plessy v. Ferguson ruling, where they basically said separate but equal, it doesn't violate civil rights to segregate people by race. And so this ushered in this very dark period of history where segregation became the norm, but also as part of that was very explicit tactics for Black voter disenfranchisement. And so this is why people are very much concerned that this is a second coming of Jim Crow. So what happened is, Georgia governor, the devil in Georgia, however you want to call it, Brian Kemp, passes this 90-plus page omnibus bill called SB 202, and it limits mail-in voting, makes it illegal to give people waiting in line to vote food or water, normal portable polling sites, unlimited challenges to voter registration. Voters must have a driver's license or state ID to vote in person, or a photocopy to vote via mail. And the list goes on, and it has been denounced by multiple people as racially targeted. But we have some clips, and my concern with this, that these very blatant things, the no food and water, the no polling sites, are meant to distract from some of the bigger things that are occurring in this bill that they talk about in the clips that we have.
This new Georgia election law, we focused a lot on the public-facing things, like you can't give people food and water when they're waiting in line for 8 hours. The absentee early voting is being curtailed. But there are deeply pernicious things happening behind the scenes in the election machinery for the state. Among them, removing the Secretary of State from the state election board chair, allowing the state election board to delay certification, allowing the state election board to replace local election officials. When you read those, what runs through your mind?
Well, Alex, it makes me angry. It makes me angry to hear that conversation that you just played between the former president and the Secretary of State. It makes me angry that we have elected officials who seem to want to just suck up to the former president as opposed to following the law, that they'd rather disenfranchise voters than allow their voices to be heard. So I'm angry. And I will tell you, I'm the Pennsylvania Attorney General. We're talking about this matter in Georgia, and I think it's important that we are, because this can happen anywhere.
Yeah, so this is some very alarming stuff. And the thing about it is that it just allows them to remove officials, state officials, at their discretion. And so it's very problematic. And the problem is that other states are starting to propose similar kinds of bills. And I just want to give a big shout out to Lisa for, I was very busy today doing grades and stuff, and she sent me some information that was super, super helpful. So thank you, Lisa. So these voter restrictive laws are also being proposed in many states, in addition to those already passed in Georgia, including key swing states that during the 2020 election are like proposing restrictions on access to make absentee voting and other changes that will make it more difficult for their citizens to make it to the polls. And by citizens, which particular demographics we're talking about. There's a lot of speculation. It's not necessarily speculation, but a lot of expressed concern by multiple people and organizations that this is going to disproportionately affect people of color, in particular Black people who are going to vote. And I know we have some additional clips on this, David.
It's the new election law that many tonight are calling racist, signed by the same Georgia governor who refused to go along with the wildest rumors of widespread fraud in the last two elections, where the Democrats won. And here's what he's saying now.
There's no doubt there were many alarming issues with how the election was handled.
There are now two photos defining this pivotal moment, one with the white Republican men signing the law, and another with a lone Black woman getting arrested for trying to get in the room. State Representative Park Cannon is a Democrat, and she was put in jail after she refused to stop knocking on the governor's door.
There is no reason for me to be arrested. I am a legislator. Do not touch me.
U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock is the pastor of her church and was at the jail when they bailed her out.
What we have witnessed today is a desperate attempt to lock out and squeeze the people out of their own democracy.
Senator Warnock, I think, nails it in the last few seconds of that last clip.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also you have Reverend Jamal Bryan of Georgia, who basically said, quote, you're going to see a whole lot of first-time voters, younger voters, and disillusioned and disenfranchised voters heading back to the polls because they realize what's at stake. But they have to be able to vote, with the, basically massive restrictions in place. It's going to be more difficult for people to vote. And here you have a Black female representative being arrested for simply knocking on the door and wanting to witness that being signed into law. How is that not reflective of people's concerns about this being a racially targeted law? But again, my bigger concern is that people are going to be so focused on these things, which they should be, that they think that are going to particularly disenfranchise Black voters, that they're overlooking the fact that they're basically, we can, do away with whatever we want to skew the votes in our favor because of the way these laws are set up. So in addition to Georgia, we have Florida, Arizona, and Texas, who are working on similar laws. And Pennsylvania, North Dakota, and Oklahoma are all seeking to eliminate no excuse absentee voting. So these are big changes they're seeking to make to the ways in which people can vote.
There's three things that jump to mind for me here. Number one, these very actions disenfranchise military voters and military families. That's the first thing that jumps out of my mind. The second thing that jumps out of my mind, it is now easier to buy a gun in Georgia because you could do a direct purchase with no background check, the gun show loophole, than it is to vote. The third thing that jumps out at me is whenever lawmakers sign a law in a clandestine way, any rational person should then go, something is afoot and it is not good.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing, if you're not willing to stand behind what you're signing into law and let people witness that, you're doing something shady. And he knows that, after what happened in Georgia and the way that it flipped, but also it's so ironic given the way in which he kind of, he pushed back against the Trump voter election fraud and that phone call. And then here he is signing this completely egregious law in place that fundamentally restricts the ways in which people can vote.
Yeah, something that jumps out at me, if we use Texas as an example, Texas has gone through thousands upon thousands of manpower hours, people power hours, and spent over $1 million looking for voter fraud in 2020. The voter fraud that they found where the ballots actually slipped through the crack, you could count on both hands with fingers left over. And the ballots that they intercepted before they went out were almost all exclusively, it was like 98% to 2% Republican ballots.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I don't understand how they think that this is going to stick, that they're going to be able to do this. But I think there's such a desperation by the Republican Party and particularly older white men to stay in power because they're so afraid of that slipping out of their hands and into the hands of people of color who have been historically mistreated by white people for hundreds of years. And they have a fear that they're going to be treated as poorly as they've treated other people, and they can't allow that to happen.
And they're fighting against a losing tide, and that is why they're trying to grip closer and closer. And the line from Princess Leia in the 4th episode of the Star Wars movies comes to mind: the tighter that you make your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems flow through your fingers. Jennifer, we have a little bit of a clip. It is from Brian Kemp's team for his re-election campaign and what his platform is going to be. I'd like to go ahead and play that.
Oh, please do.
You've got to talk him off his platform now. Death to America? He's clearly not pro-life.
You can tell that to the polls. The people love him.
Death to Edgar Bennett of Watkinsville, who has to work 2 jobs to pay for heating oil. Death to Bobby Ellaby of Winder.
He's a widower, too, so he gets the sympathy vote. Ever since Lil's tragic passing.
I was there early. I saw the carnage.
Oh, here comes the spin now.
Death to high taxes. Death to big government. Death to America. Do you want to go that way?
Jennifer, what jumps out at me on that clip is from 2009. Did this in some terrifying way predict the future, like to perfection?
I don't know. I mean, like, after what happened with The Simpsons and Donald Trump, I'm not going to say no.
Jennifer, we will definitely keep our eye, because there's an effort in Washington state to do away with universal mail-in voting and make it harder to vote here. The reality is there's a cynical attempt. It's really not going to move the needle because of the way that the demographics and the politics are set up in this state. But it is an attempt from people who claim that they cherish individual rights and freedoms, who are trying to do away with individual rights and freedoms. Thank you for bringing us the story tonight. Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you. And for as little as $5 a month, you can help continue to bring independent journalism and interviews like we had with Dr. Green tonight, and interviews like last week that we had with Dr. Fauci, and the exclusive video that we had last week of the carjacker driving through the protest. All of that is possible because of you. And for our higher level malcontents, one of the perks of being a patron is you get once a month a behind the scenes session with me, the malcontent, where we go 1 hour in studios. It is basically an AMA, no hold bar. And on this particular AMA, which is coming up on Wednesday at 8 p.m., but you have to be a patron to be on board for that, we're actually going to do a walkthrough through the studio and show all of the technology that's going to be going here. So an exclusive behind the scenes look of everything that's around here. And the crew saw all the pictures because I went through and reorganized everything to get ready for Wednesday because it was a disaster in here. And the crew can tell you it's a much bigger room than you think. And there's a lot more stuff in here than you think.